Passed.
Good morning. This meeting is called to order. For the record, the time is 1:30 p.m. and the date is July 22, 2025. Commission and staff are appearing from Helena, Montana in the Bowling Room of the Montana Public Service Commission. I am Brad Molnar. I'm presiding chairman for this meeting. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in checking your phone. Save a lot of money at the donut shop doing it that way. So, for the record, the following commissioners are present. We have Commissioner Wellborn, Commissioner Pinocci, we have Commissioner Fielder, and we have Commissioner Bukacek. Therefore, we have a quorum, and we're all here in person. The Public Service Commission welcomes any comment on any item that is on today's agenda or any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Montana Public Service Commission. Are there any public commenters in the room? Seeing none. Are there any public commenters online? We had one that said that they would come on. They're not on yet. Should they come on before we're done, we'll let them talk. Announcements on August 5th, for what it's worth. The commission has the following announcement regarding docket number 2020.09.94, investigation of North Star Development LLC. The commission issued order 7744E in December of 2024, finding that North Star had failed to show cause why the commission should not pursue penalties as prescribed in Montana Code 69-3-206. The commission cited North Star's failure to cooperate with the commission and failure to provide reasonably adequate service. Pursuing penalties under Montana Code 69-3-206 requires the commission to file a case in district court calculating and justifying a specific penalty amount based on evidence gathered in the commission's investigation. The commission intends to take up the issue of the penalty amount at the August 5th business meeting. I don't believe there are any other announcements. Did I miss any? Okay, so we have the minutes Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, do I have a motion on the minutes?
Mr. President, I move approval of the commission minutes for the week of July 7th, 2025.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of July 27, 2025. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Panucci has seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the motion, say aye.
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 And those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, 5-0. So, so now we'll begin the work session items. And the first one will be commission-initiated staff interaction with investor-owned utility staff, MDU Northwestern Energy, and interveners in current rate case as concerns with House Bill 490. House Bill 490 is the Wildfire Mitigation Act. Seeing so this is mine, is there a motion to on the request? Yes.
Before you make a motion, I'd like to hear staff perspective on this topic. I have several questions. May I?
Sure.
Thank you. Atlanta Lake, are you there?
Commissioner Bukacek, I am here. Can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you. So as Executive Director of the Public Service Commission, I'd like to know your thoughts on this topic brought up by Commissioner Molnar. And first, for the sake of understanding on the part of the public, could you explain the portions of your job as Executive Director that are most relevant to this topic?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Bukacek. And I appreciate the opportunity to provide some insight here. So to be clear, from my understanding, this initiative brought forward is meant to restrict communication between staff and utilities in regard to this bill due to some concerns regarding inappropriate communication between staff and utilities. To your question, Commissioner Bukacek, my job as Chief of Staff for this agency is to oversee the operations and oversee staff work. And so this is an issue that directly pertains to the efficiency and the effectiveness of our staff working. And so I'll provide some comments here following kind of considering some of these questions that we as staff had in regard to this issue brought forward. So first off, I'll tell you, I do have a bit of a short timeline here, so I would appreciate if I'm able to make it through all these comments before there are responses, because I think there may be some clarification afterward if that's appropriate. So President Molnar, I do appreciate your concern regarding staff communication with utilities, as any unlawful or inappropriate communication between this agency and utilities is unacceptable. And in the interest of continuing this dialogue, I believe it's important to raise two key points for further consideration. First, I am still unclear about what is driving this initiative to restrict communication between staff and utilities. To date, there have been no substantiated concerns regarding staff conduct or their communications with utilities that would necessitate new procedural restrictions. We have not witnessed any commission order in recent history that has been unduly influenced by improper communication with the utility. In fact, our institutional memory spanning at least 3 decades confirms that staff have always been permitted and expected to engage in appropriate and professional dialogue with utility representatives on procedural matters. The assertion that House Bill 490 is directly correlated with our ongoing rate case with Northwestern Energy and therefore must not be discussed among staff is simply not accurate. House Bill 490 was signed into law by the governor, and the discussion of its implementation must exist as a process independent of the rate case. It is a normal and healthy process for utility and PSC staff to have dialogue about a new piece of legislation with impacts to both parties. Considering the short timeline, communication is critical. And in regard to public transparency, we are committed as staff to ensuring the process is transparent, just as we are with every other docket and issue of public interest that comes before the commission. However, this does not mean that communication should be restricted between staff and the utilities. Here at the PSC, I'm proud that we maintain a team of highly professional and trustworthy staff, and I have full confidence in their integrity. Our chief legal counsel has provided ongoing training for both staff and commissioners on ex parte communication rules and appropriate communications as recently as, I believe, May 2025. So staff are well versed in the legal and the ethical parameters of interactions with utilities. In May 2025, you accused a well-respected employee who has served this agency with distinction of inappropriate discussions with the utility. That allegation was thoroughly reviewed and ultimately found to be unsubstantiated. And following that matter, I shared my concern that such accusations reflected a level of distrust towards staff that was not supported by evidence. And I requested at the time that you provide any documentation or information that would justify those concerns. I have not seen any evidence to support these claims. And, if there are ongoing concerns, I would respectfully ask that they be brought forward so they can be addressed appropriately.
Could you,
My second point is
could you
this.
clarify that you're speaking about President Molnar? When you're saying
Correct, yes. I think President Molnar had
he's the one that made the accusations.
He did have concerns about the communications between a staff member, yes. My second point, I think, is there's still uncertainty about whether this restriction applies to communications with all utilities or only those related to House Bill 490. There remains significant ambiguity on this point, and both staff and I are unclear about the scope and intent of your order to cease all communications with utilities unless they are recorded. To give you an example, in, I believe it was April 2025, during my second week at the agency, you informed me that you preferred staff and I cease all in-person meetings with Northwestern Energy specifically, following a meeting I had with their executive team. At that time, you expressed your distrust of my ability to handle such interactions without undue influence to my judgment. And you even discussed your intention to bar their representatives from entering our building altogether and to disallow further meetings. Since then, you've explored options to record all in-person meetings between Northwestern Energy and agency staff. And most recently, President Molnar, you clarified that written email correspondence and recorded in-person meetings were permissible. However, it still remains unclear whether phone conversations were also allowed and whether similar restrictions will be extended to all utilities or are targeted solely at Northwestern Energy and or House Bill 490 related matters. So we would greatly appreciate clarity on this issue. In closing, I want to reiterate my full confidence in the professionalism and the integrity of our team. Should any credible evidence of misconduct arise, I know that I am fully committed alongside our managers to addressing it swiftly and appropriately. Our staff, we operate under a clear code of conduct, and our communications policy is outlined clearly in our internal policy manual, and those all offer very strong guidance and accountability. I truly believe on this issue, creating new restrictions for lawful professional communications create a very unnecessary barrier to effective operations of the team. So I respectfully and humbly urge that we do not impose additional restrictions unless they are clearly justified. I believe transparent, legal, and well-guided communication is essential to the effective functioning of this agency, Mr. President. I appreciate you allowing me to make these comments, and I look forward to hearing your response. Commissioner Bukacek, I hope that helped answer your question.
Very helpful, thank you. And I have some questions for other staff. Should I ask those now, or may I ask those now?
Sure.
Thank you again, Ms. Lake. So she addressed almost everything I was going to ask, but I think some of these things are worth hearing again and hearing from another person. So Mr. Hamilton, my understanding is that legal and regulatory staff and maybe other staff, they meet with staff of utilities privately on an as-needed basis. Is that correct?
Mr. President and Commissioner, that is correct. I would also point out that in those meetings, we are very careful not to become the conduit for ex parte communication to the commission.
I don't have any doubt about your professionalism. So, and at times, it could be a utility company staff in a case that is pending a PSC vote, correct? Potentially?
Yes, Mr. President and Commissioner Bukacek, yes. For our major utilities, they always have contested cases pending. The subjects of discussion, are wide-ranging and rarely affect the subject matter of the currently pending cases. In fact, if it addressed the material issues of fact or law in a currently pending contested case, that would be where we draw the line.
And that would be a staff person drawing that line if something like that were to come up in that private conversation. And I have full confidence in our staff. So would you say that those private meetings facilitate our work at the PSC?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, I would agree with that.
And sometimes these meetings are made on short notice.
I would also agree with that.
To have those meetings, do you have to ask commissioner approval in order to have the meetings?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, that has not been the standard practice.
And has it been standard practice to tape those conversations?
Likewise, that has not been the standard practice.
Okay. Oh, so if you could please expound upon the reasons sometimes there's benefit of closing some staff-to-staff meetings to the public and closing some of those meetings to commissioners. I'm going to ask you that in general, and then I was going to ask you to specifically, I was going to refer to the letter we just got from Ann Hedges and MEIC, but if you could address it in general terms, expound upon the reasons sometimes there's benefit of closing some staff-to-staff meetings to the public.
I'd be happy to attempt. President Molnar, Commissioner Bukacek, I think that I wouldn't use the phrase closing meetings, right? That's never our intention. Rather, the circumstances of an issue may require a quick back and forth to understand the staff position, the commission position, the utility position. It's usually procedural, scheduling, timing of filings, things that don't provide a material advantage to any one party over others in contested case proceedings. A lot of them deal with non-contested case proceedings, right? So as we have discussed in prior trainings, rulemakings, commission inquiries into new technology and broad topic investigations are not contested cases because they don't determine the legal rights and responsibilities of parties. And in those circumstances, there is no ex parte rule. And indeed, commission staff can have a more productive discussion, a more candid discussion, a discussion that doesn't involve posturing if we can communicate directly with interested parties. And we do that with regulated utilities. We do that with non-utilities that are just interested in the subject matter of cases, with members of the public as they call us and have questions about things that are pending before the commission. So we do have those discussions as the circumstances require in order to efficiently process the matters that are pending before the commission, rulemakings, investigations, as well as contested cases. Does that adequately answer your question?
For the general case, yes, it does. Very good. Thank you. And then you sent us that letter we just got from Ann Hedges from MEIC. In the last paragraph, it talks about it's appropriate and necessary for the PSC to open to the public any meetings between PSC and regulated utility regarding wildlife mitigation plans. I was wondering if you could address that paragraph, if that would be appropriate. If it's inappropriate for you to address it, you just let me know. So I have another question for you.
President Molnar and commissioners, for your information, today we received a letter that Commissioner Bukacek just referred to from MEIC. That is the Montana Environmental Information Center, and its executive director, I believe, is Ann's title. Let me just check that. Yes, executive director Ann Hedges, encouraging the commission to conduct any process related to House Bill 490 and the wildfire mitigation plans in a public, transparent way. Certainly, that is the intention of commission staff, and I fully anticipate that the commission intends to do things the exact same way. We will have an obligation to conduct rulemaking under House Bill 490. House Bill 490's rulemaking element is well defined in MAPPA, what we have to do and the discussions that we have to have and the public process associated with it. So yes, there will be an open, transparent public process associated with rulemaking, as well as the public process that House Bill 490 prescribes for the consideration and review of wildfire mitigation plans. I think, let me stop there. And
How about the staff to staff visits that we're talking about, the staff to staff meetings that we're talking about? Many of us would like to keep those private.
Sure. So, you know, we had originally received a request from Northwestern Energy to meet with staff to discuss, as I understood it, the process for submitting their opening filing, their original effort at a wildfire mitigation plan filing under House Bill 490. Normally, we would have administrative rules in place in order to accommodate that filing and guide the process. But because it's impossible to complete the MAPPA rulemaking process before that original filing must be submitted, Northwestern wanted to contact staff and discuss the filing process, right? What would be involved in submitting that initial filing? I think the intention of Northwestern was certainly not nefarious. It was to have a candid discussion about the process. Not about the substance of the plan, not about the substance of anything currently pending in Northwestern's general rate case, just the process. And so given the timelines that we have under House Bill 490 and the very quick turnaround that we're going to have to process that wildfire mitigation plan in, it doesn't seem unreasonable to me for staff to have a discussion about process, knowing that the process is public, right? Everything that's involved will be the subject of the commission's review and approval, of course, procedurally and substantively. So there will be a public process associated with House Bill 490.
I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff at this time? I'll underline at this time. Our public commenter is online. Matt, if you'd hold on until we get done with this part of our schedule for today. Commissioner Panochi.
Listening to Alana, I think she wanted you to have a chance to explain. And I think the best way to do that is for me to second your motion so you can maybe address these questions. I'm willing to do that now so that you can explain why it is you think this. Thank you.
I haven't made a motion yet. Did you wish to make a motion?
Oh, you did.
Yeah. You got tied up in staff discussions.
We'll make a motion for you.
Okay. According to Robert's Rules of Orders, it's okay, but frowned upon for the chairman to make his own motion. So I will second mine and we'll open this up for discussion. Commissioner Fielder, I see you hit your line.
Yeah, I just would like the motion stated so we know what it is that we're.
Okay, there's a small change to this. I discussed it with Will the other day because it very narrows the scope of this. What I intend to say at the end of this is that that we will approve my motion. Number 2. Okay. I will make a motion that we adopt limitations on interaction between PSC staff and utility staff on items concerning a current rate case and House Bill 490. Staff are allowed to respond to questions by email and meet in the PSC conference room when meetings are to be recorded. This shall be incorporated into the rules affecting actions on House Bill 490. So at the end of 490 and the rate case, which I would like to think will be within the next 3 or 4 months, the rule would become moot and we would take a second look at what we're doing right or wrong when things like this arise. So that will be the motion.
Okay, so the end of the motion, I see the written one that you had proposed
Right.
in the work session. So you added what to the end of it?
I would
please?
add that this shall be incorporated into the rules affecting actions on House Bill 490. So this would be on the rate case as it ties into 490, and then the rule goes away.
Okay, just a clarification, what rules are you talking about?
That if anyone wants to discuss 490 with staff, that they do it they make a request via email. If they want to have a face-to-face, which we just discussed, they can do it in the Bollinger Room, and we can, or in the Commissioners' Conference Room, and we can record it.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're not talking about administrative rulemaking amendments or anything like that. It's just implementing a directive basically from the
Well,
commission.
by the plain wording of 490, we're supposed to write rules. Getting all the rules done are a little difficult because of time frame and public input and all of that, but is my understanding. So to the best of our ability, we'll put it into a standard rule, which will allow all the public input. So there'll be further discussions on this. But in the meantime, I think we heard fairly clearly that it is within the purview of the president to direct the commission. And I instituted these for various reasons, which I'll get into in just a minute, I guess. And that's where we are. However, I heard some pushback at the executive. So not wanting to be somebody that just dictates things and waits for pushback, I decided we'd have a public discussion on it, and that's what we're doing right now.
Okay, thank you. May I ask Lucas regarding the application of this part of the motion, incorporating it into rules? How would that work in practice?
Mr. President and Vice President, thank you for the question, because that also raises a slight red flag for me that I think it's important for the commission to consider and discuss how the motion can be phrased. If the direction to staff is to incorporate those limitations into the rule proposal for House Bill 490, that is something that we could do, right? Because that is the beginning of the MAPA rulemaking process. If the conclusion is that that should be the ultimate decision in the House Bill 490 rulemaking process before you've engaged in the public rulemaking process, I would advise against that. It's important to start with the rule proposal, address the feedback. You'll receive feedback on a number of things. I don't know if you'll receive feedback on this particular facet of the rule, but it would be important not to make your decision about what that final rule should be until you've gone through the public process. So I would caution against making that part of the final rule that's adopted at this stage, but rather directing staff to include it, if it is your direction, as part of the rulemaking proposal.
I believe we wind up just about all of these with staff to edit as necessary or whatever, and bring it back if there's any question, but I don't have any problem with that. My concern is that I want to have a very public conversation on this, and I don't think the conversation is going away no matter what we do today. So to stick with the admonishments of House Bill 490, that we're supposed to write rules, let's write a rule, because this is a very unique situation. I've never seen anything like this before.
Mr. President, may I ask a question of Mr. Rosequist?
Please.
First, I'll say that when I first came to the agency, I had similar concerns about how much both commissioners and staff interact with regulated entities. And I've always taken the approach that I think we should help regulated entities comply with the laws and with the orders of the commission. If there's need for dialogue and conversation on how to comply, I think it's important that those conversations can be had without limitations other than the laws must be followed in terms of appropriate communications, and our policies line that out, as well as the MAPA laws and ex parte laws and so forth. But my question for Will is, in practice, what impact would this have if the motion is passed today? What impact would that have on your staff's ability to provide timely work for the commission.
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I guess it's hard to say exactly what the impact will be. I agree with Lucas that a lot of what we need to sort out in the most pragmatic way possible at this point is how this process is going to work. This bill is a little different in that it imposes on the commission some responsibilities as far as approval of a plan and making certain findings related to making that approval. And so the process that is used by the commission to obtain the information that's necessary to determine whether or not those findings can be made is going to be important. And as Alana mentioned, we don't have a lot of time under this bill. By my calculations, the plans need to be filed by September 17th if the commission is going to be able to achieve the December 31st deadline to either approve a plan or find that there are certain deficiencies in the plan. That has to include a 45-day public comment period. And so some of the things that we're struggling with are, what processes can we use to evaluate the comments that come in from the public or from stakeholders to obtain information or answers to questions that staff or the commission has about the plans that are filed with us eventually. What constitutes a record, if there can be a record. So if we're going to be able to effectively implement this bill in the timeframes that it provides, we need to make some progress fairly quickly in obtaining sort of a common understanding of the process that the agency is going to use to evaluate the plans and to ultimately make the decisions that the commission needs to make. So the quicker that staff can resolve some of these issues about process, the better we'll be able to implement the bill. If we get bogged down in what the process is going to be, if there are a bunch of legal disputes over what the process is even supposed to look like, then I am pessimistic about the commission's ability to implement the bill the way it's written.
Okay, so am I hearing that that if this motion passes, it will make it more difficult to implement the law that the legislature mandated that we implement timely?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I think I'm saying that that's possible. If we have to do everything through email correspondence or, recorded and noticed meetings, that's going to, in my view, somewhat encumber the process. I'm not saying it can't be done, but like I said, the deadlines are fast approaching and we need to resolve some of these procedural issues fairly quickly.
Okay. Lucas, for you, Mr. Hamilton, when I read House Bill 490, which I think is really, President Molnar, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really where you've boiled it down to, is you're concerned about House Bill 490
Right.
and possible pre-approval. If we approve the plan, that we may be locked into pre-approving the costs associated with the plan. Is that correct?
It says in the bill that once it's been implemented, it is determined to be in the public interest and a balanced plan, which would be pre-approval. So then they would, and I've heard pushback, well, no, we could just still have a rate case. Well, as in the current rate case and all cases before it. There's going to be a settlement that black boxes this. And how do we argue that 3 months ago it was in the public interest and a well-balanced approach? And then we argue that no, it's too much money.
Okay. Would staff please address that for us? So, I mean, I share that concern. When I read the bill, you know, we are required to either approve the plan and find that it is in the public interest and that it reasonably balances the incremental costs of implementing the plan with the risk of a potential wildfire. We received a letter from Northwestern's counsel that no, this is not, this would not be deemed pre-approval, that we would still maintain the right and responsibility to address rates and costs within a regular rate case. Lucas, is that, which is correct?
President Molnar, Vice President Fielder, it's an excellent question. And for the purposes of answering it, I'd refer you, if you have House Bill 490 in front of you, to page 5, top of page 5, which is new section 2, part 6. That part of House Bill 490 describes the 3 criteria that a reviewing authority, the approval authority, must evaluate to determine whether or not the plan should be approved. And so to President Molnar's point, yes, a finding that it is in the public interest is one of the criteria that the Commission must consider when evaluating wildfire mitigation plans under House Bill 490. However, as I think we've all established, the process contemplated by this bill is not a full contested case. The timelines really don't even allow that in the traditional rate-making sense. So there's no discussion in the bill of intervention. There's no discussion in the bill of discovery. There's no discussion in the bill of an evidentiary hearing. There's a discussion of a public meeting, but without an evidentiary hearing where you would swear in witnesses and subject those witnesses to cross-examination from the parties involved, to commission questions and questions from staff, you wouldn't end the process with what we consider to be the traditional evidentiary record built in front of the Commission. And so then the question arises, as Mr. Rosequist noted before, what is the evidentiary record that serves as the basis for the Commission's finding that this is in the public interest? It has to be something less than the rules of evidence, but it still accounts for all of the public comment and process that the bill already describes. So this is a long way of saying that at the end of this process, I do think it's important for the Commission to preserve its ability to exercise a full prudency review in the context of a rate case, in whatever form that rate case takes in a future proceeding. But at least as far as House Bill 490 and its process is involved, this is not like the pre-approval process that you see for generation resources. And one of the key differences that I would call the Commission's attention to is the fact that under 69-8-421, which is what we traditionally refer to as the pre-approval statute, once the Commission has granted pre-approval to a resource, future commissions or even the same commission in a later proceeding cannot change the findings of fact that you've made about the prudency of the acquisition of that resource. You are locked into those findings by statute. No such provision exists in House Bill 490. So the legislature, knowing how the pre-approval statute works, drafted this bill differently. And I think it's reasonable for the Commission to assume that it still has the latitude in those future proceedings to reach a different prudency review conclusion, right? About the prudency of the investments the utility has made in wildfire mitigation plans. And at the very least, I would encourage the Commission not to reach the legal conclusion that it is bound to this public interest finding before you've completed the first review of a wildfire mitigation plan, right? We're at the very front stage of this House Bill 490 process. And you will make some findings and conclusions along the way in your final decision on that wildfire mitigation plan. But I would strongly encourage that the Commission not box itself in today into a statement about what that final decision will mean for future rate proceedings.
Okay. So in your opinion, as our chief legal counsel, first of all, House Bill 490 does not obligate the Commission to approving any sort of rates or costs.
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, that is a very important point. House Bill 490 is not about rate making. It is not about the cost recovery and the implementation of new tariffs for rate making purposes. Yes.
Okay. And this is a new process that House Bill 490 has established. And it seems to me like more communication rather than less communication is imperative at this point, so we can work through it and actually implement the law as effectively as possible. Would you agree with that?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I would agree that communication will be essential to the implementation of this law in the first run through the briar patch. Yes.
Okay. And would being restricted to communicate as the president has proposed preclude the efficient and timely flow of those necessary communications, possibly or probably?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I'd say that it's certainly possible. I think this afternoon's informational meeting could establish how far we can get on clarifying the procedure. If we make good headway this afternoon, the delay that we've incurred so far may end up being not as substantial. If it appears that we don't have a process or a plan after the end of today's informational meeting, and it will require more discussions, more back and forth, more feedback, more consultation with interested parties, because I do think it's important to note here that while we're focused on regulated utilities, there are lots of other parties, including MEIC, who are interested in this, and we would certainly solicit feedback and input from those parties as well. But if we have to do that through the recorded process or the notice public meeting process, that will naturally just add additional time to the feedback process.
Okay. Well, again, Mr. President, I had some similar concerns about pre-approval when I read this bill, but given the explanations I've received and reviewed, I think that those impressions are, initial impressions are probably not, I think the concern of that has been well refuted. And I think we should let our professionals do their jobs and be professionals. So I'm not going to support your motion that would inhibit speech. And I know that we talked about this at the quarterly administrative meeting last week, and I thought that you had received an understanding of where the majority of the commission fell on your proposal here. But I don't know if anything's changed, but I don't think I've been persuaded to change my mind.
Okay, that's fine. Will, do you have a moment? I have a question. Okay, to me, this is far simpler than all of this. We kind of started where the last one ended, which was a demagoguery of me, and I'm not trusting staff, and I said this and I said that, and I'm not sure all those are 100% accurate, and I don't think it makes any difference. That's not what we're discussing here. What we're discussing here, and this goes to what and you can chime in on this as well, is in the case specific 490, they had during the rate case, I believe they had 5, for sure 4 testifiers on fire mitigation. All of those issues are in 490. I see no way to pull those apart. Can't be done. If somebody thinks it can be done, there's probably an attorney that would argue that it can't be done. So why is it that if the communication is done on process, and all we're talking about at this point is process, and I don't intend to ever get into telling them what size fire hose to have or how far back to trim a branch or any of that. That's not ours, and if we do it, we're opening up a tremendous amount of liability. So why would it be so rough on your department or the legal department that you received an email? What size font do you want? When's your deadline? How do we file this? Why would that be a burden in email? And if it needs to be done in person, you do it in the commissioner's conference room or any other one that has a recording. I would point out minutes of meetings 23202, appropriate minutes of all meetings required by 23203, which is just about everything, to be open must be kept and available for inspection by the public. If an audio recording of a meeting is made and it designated as official, the recording constitutes the official record of the meeting. There's nothing in there about public notice. It's a matter of get a recording. It's a matter of we now have a Word document, an email. This was the question and this was the answer. Why would that at any point, for any reason, be a burden or a drag on the process?
President Molnar, so from my perspective, again, I didn't say that we couldn't follow a process like that, but I do think it would become more cumbersome if we just rely on, for example, email, and we send an email to the company or we send an email to some other stakeholder. You know, you wait for them to read the email, respond to the email. You get around to reading the email when it comes back. Maybe there was a miscommunication. You have to follow up because they didn't understand what you were asking for. So you send another email, you wait for them to receive it. People are doing their other tasks. And so rather than, you know, either being able to pick up the phone and say, let's get on a call and walk through a number of items, have the back and forth where you can make sure that they're understanding the question that you're asking and that you're understanding the answer that they're giving. And again, on the process, how is this process going to work? Not on the substance of the plan, not on what they're planning as far as vegetation management or public safety power shutoffs. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how we're going to process these plans, right? My perspective is that kind of communication, that kind of in-person communication, face-to-face, or at least when you can hear a person, is more efficient, can be more efficient. And that's where I feel like the kind of trying to find a pragmatic approach to doing this is what I'm looking for. And again, like I said, we can do a very strict on the record, either emails or letters or whatever it would be to document everything that we're talking about. But at the end of the day, I'm just not sure whether that is the most pragmatic approach, given the deadlines that we're facing and given the nature of what we're wanting to talk about, the process and not the substance. So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, it does. It just doesn't, to my way of thinking, address the reality, which is anybody from Northwestern, MDU, Avista can send in a request, but the request is going to be on process. To answer the question, you're assuming that these people aren't going to be able to understand you. I'm assuming that they can. In all the things I looked up, statute, constitution, ex parte is not mentioned. It's all agency, and it all calls for transparency. I will grant you that a closed door meeting or a phone call may be more efficient. It doesn't go to transparency. So if you don't like my idea of transparency, put it in writing, do it on a recorded, you can probably record your phone calls too. I talked to our IT people about that, and they said, yeah, we can do that too. So I'm saying record it. Because 10 years from now, when possibly when you might be retired, if there's a fire and any one of the three I just mentioned says, they told us to do this, we did it, it didn't work. You're right into they had power over us, we did what they said, and now you've got body bags and 100,000 square acres. In this case, where the legislature, at the request of Northwestern, created a bill that interties with everything they wanted in their rate case, it's unique. I can't imagine that anybody can fault us for recording and having a record. I would agree that a closed door or a phone conversation may be more efficient. I don't know that it gets us where we want to go. I haven't read the email from N Hedges. I'm sure they're not the only ones that would be interested in an open, transparent process. And if you want to see something get bogged down in the courts, tell them we're going to have closed door meetings with them, but not you. And you're going to be there and you will lose. We've lost. Everybody's ever lost any case to where government can shut the doors. It's never happened where the court said, sure, go ahead, close the doors. These interveners can talk because they want to talk about this issue. Those can't because they have a different issue. They'll be able to come in and say, well, this is request for proposals. Well, there's a lot of that in this too. I'm relying on you because I'm leaving them out of this to know that it's in the rate case and no, we can't talk about it. I'm saying specifically 490 tells us that we have to, and I would very much disagree with reserving the right to determine what is pre-approval. We've only got a couple of months. But to say that we're going to closed door meetings and phone conversations that are not recorded are more efficient is true. I also think that they can't be defended. They can't be defended. So I think it's up to them, whoever them is, to send an email that's clear, date, time, place. We're going to have to work together to have public meetings. All of those are outside the rate case. All of those should go pretty darn quickly. So why, again, do you think having conversations that are recorded if they want to come in and recorded in emails if they don't on the singular issue, because this is all we're tasked with, of process, how do we talk to each other on rates and dates for public comment? Why is this so difficult that it causes you concern?
Asked and answered.
Thank you. Please answer the question.
Mr. President, I don't know if I can add any more to what I've already said, other than at the end of the day, staff is happy to do whatever the commission directs. So if the commission directs us to do everything by email or in writing or to record our meetings, staff will happily comply.
Mr. President? I think there's an important distinction to make that I don't think has been raised, or if it has, I haven't heard it. That is that we, as the decision makers, have to make sure that our process is open and transparent, and we cannot have closed door meetings with the utility on anything dealing with the rate case. No commissioner is allowed to do that, even as an individual, let alone a quorum. So I want to just be clear that we're not necessarily talking about the decision makers at this point, because when we do enter deliberations, it is recorded, it is publicly noticed, it is on the record, and there is ample public opportunity and transparency with anything that the commission does as a commission. But what we're talking about here is the standard professional staff to professional staff type communication so that they can understand each other. And I know that if we had to do everything by if anybody had to do every conversation by email or every conversation recorded, it would have a chilling effect on your ability to actually communicate and have a free flowing conversation that was productive. So I think what you're asking is counterproductive. I think it's unnecessary. I don't think it's going to accomplish anything except bog us down and slow us down. In terms of allowing our fact finders to get the facts and to sort out an agreeable process. To me, it's no different than going into a scheduling meeting with the parties like we did in the PCN case last week. And it's standard after we close the main hearing part of the evidentiary hearing, and we go off the record, and then we talk with the parties and their attorneys about the schedule and what kind of scheduling do we want to do. And we took about 20 or 30 minutes just talking with the attorneys and their clients about the schedule for how we would proceed with that PCN case. And that's all off the record. It doesn't need to be on the record because it's a back and forth, like, well, this date works, that date doesn't work. Maybe we should try, compressing this time from, it's just a conversation that everyone was free to be candid and have that conversation. And then when we arrived at consensus, we came back and announced what the rest of that scheduling order would be. And it's a procedural thing. And I don't see it the way you see it in terms of the danger of allowing our professional staff to continue doing their jobs as professional staff, talk to other professionals. They know the boundaries, they can do the work, and we should let them do it. Thank you.
I'll throw this in. I've been reading everything I've read, which isn't a tremendous amount, but it's everything I could find. Professional staff doesn't come up, ex parte doesn't come up, commissioner doesn't come up. What does come up? Article 2, Section 8, Montana Constitution. The public has the right to expect government agencies to afford such reasonable opportunity for citizen participation in the operation of the agencies prior to the final decision as may be provided by law. There's no law that says you can have closed-door meetings. It doesn't exist. It says we can have closed-doors meetings to discuss legal things, which I think is part of what you were talking about. And I don't think anybody even cares about scheduling. But I don't think that can be closed just because it's convenient. The public has the right to expect government agencies to afford such reasonable opportunities, citizen participation in the operation of agencies prior to the final decision as may be provided by law. And a lot of what we're talking about now will be in a rate case. It is and will be before the commission. And the public has a right, I believe, even if it took an extra day to get somebody to respond to an email, to be able to read those and make a comment, contact us, public comment, legal ramification, legal challenge, whatever the case might be. That's what this says.
Mr. President, I think there's an issue of ministerial functions of government that are administrative and procedural, and maybe our chief legal could speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. President and Vice President. This is a very important point, and I want to make sure that it's clear. I understand the statute that you're referring to, President Molnar, and its description of the minutes of public meetings. But I would disagree with the assertion that meeting is basically everything under the sun. Meeting is defined in code, and a meeting as used in that part means the convening of a quorum of the constituent membership of a public agency or association, whether by corporal or means of electronic equipment, to hear, discuss, or act upon a matter over which the agency has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. That is Montana Code Annotated 2-3-202. So it's important here that we're talking about the convening of a quorum of the constituent members of, in this case, the commission, to make a decision, to discuss, to consider matters within the commission's jurisdiction. If your interpretation of public meeting is blown out to include meetings of staff, then our problem is much larger than just having a conversation with a regulated entity. It is that every public meeting, every meeting of staff internally then becomes a meeting within the definition of Montana Code that has to be noticed, and it does have to be published on the commission's agenda with an opportunity for public participation and an opportunity for public comment. That is not historically how Title 2, Chapter 3, Section 202 has been interpreted. I would strongly advise the commission to resist that type of interpretation going forward, because it will have significant consequences for the agency. I also appreciate, President Molnar, that you didn't find notice in that section of the statute. That's actually discussed in a different portion of Montana Code Annotated in 2-3-103, discusses the public notice that has to be provided and the agendas that must be published in advance of convening a public meeting as defined in Montana Code. So I do think it's very important for us to not conflate the public meeting that's described in that section about meeting minutes with the types of meetings that we're discussing here. Because critically here, we're talking about a meeting that does not involve a quorum of commissioners, which are the constituent members of this agency who have the power, the authority to make decisions.
I understand that. My purpose was to show that a tape recording does act as public information. And what we're after here, I believe, is public information. And if I might, I made my bones in the legislature doing this. I'm a strict constitutionalist. And to sit here and listen to arguments, discussions, that because of this, we can take the public out. Because it's efficient, we can have closed door meetings. I think people should run on it. The question today will be, are we going to allow closed door meetings and on documented decisions and discussions that are on phones so they can't be traced on what could be tens of millions of dollars in the next rate case, and that can be shut out in a black box in a split second. I'm saying we do it right up front. Those of you that saw my letter with Mr. Green, I asked for how much they'd spent already on the things that are in for 490, and basically told me that we're kind of busy, so if you want to come and read them, you can do that, but I'm not going to send them to you. That means I can't get them to the commission. I can't get them to the staff. I can't get them anywhere. This is the kind of activity that I'm trying to get around. To say that we favor closed door meetings is a no vote.
Misrepresentation of that letter.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'm not voting on what you just described in any shape, way, or form. I am voting against shutting down effective flow of business. So government moves slow enough as it is, and our staff works very hard and does a very good job. They are the professionals. I think you heard our legal counsel's representation of what public meetings are and what's required under the law, what's required under the Constitution. And if you disagree with that, I guess you disagree with it, but I think he's correct. In fact, I'm certain he's correct. And I think you're way, way, way off base on what you're saying here and what this would actually achieve. I don't think it would achieve any kind of productive outcome. And I'm going to call for the question, Mr. President, so we can vote and hopefully move on.
Mr. President, I had one more comment because I haven't really entered into the discussion session. I had my questions answered and I've had other concerns answered, all asked and answered. But I have one more point I wanted to make. It'll be brief. Mr. President, may I?
Yeah, we'll ignore that. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. So
I withdraw the question, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice. All right. So I have the letter to Mr. Jacobson of Montana Dakota Utilities in front of me. It's dated June 27, 2025. And it requested, and I'm thinking this is probably the same letter that was sent to Mr. Merkel, quote, all signed contracts to implement HB 490's goals, including but not limited to contracts for services like vegetation management, monitoring, inspections, and contracts for equipment, on and on and on, competing solicitation processes. There's nothing in this letter about transparency. There's nothing in this letter about pre-approval. It's all about concern for staff and trying to make things smooth for staff. And the things that you recommended have nothing to do with the requirements for HB 490, and they would actually add a tremendous burden to our staff. And so you switched from looking out for the staff when that red herring didn't seem to pan out. You switch to transparency. And I think they both Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Rosecrans have addressed those adequately today. And you switch to pre-approval, and red herring after red herring after red herring. So I just wanted to point that out.
I think closed meetings are a red herring. What I'd like to do very quickly is I'm going to read my little thing I had prepared. It's really not, it'll cover some of this stuff, but before somebody calls to shut down any conversation, because I found that too many people were concerned about the outlying issues, I shall amend the motion to have the rule implemented in rules we need to write concerning House Bill 490. This will limit the impact and duration of my ruling. At the executive session, it was wrongfully implied that I was taking this action because I do not trust staff. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The problem is that Northwestern Energy has embedded fire mitigation into the rate case. I didn't do that. And in legislation, it is difficult to discuss one without the other in a closed setting and not rouse suspicion or angst. We are not allowed to create the impression of impropriety. So what I'm proposing, is open discussion on issues that do not overlap via questions presented in email to create a record the public can inspect, Article 2, Section 9, or a face-to-face meeting is better to do it in the Commissioners' conference room where it can be recorded. These meet our obligation for transparency and public involvement. We cannot discuss what is in a rate case. 490 is in a rate case. The statutes do not address ex parte. They only mention agency involvement and the need for openness at all levels. And House Bill 490 does not say we need to help an NOU develop the plan. We must then judge. Rather, it seems that our role is to see if they have complied with the law. And if we do that, the transfer liability to ratepayers and taxpayers will be minimized. Currently, this is a massive problem of liability. You said that didn't work. You're in the lawsuit because of the fire. However much it costs us to get out of that is from ratepayers. They drug us into this. I would point out that if indeed my motion passes, the emails and the recordings will be the only documentation. There, as Lucas pointed out, even the Montana Consumer Council can only give public comment. There is no investigatory evidentiary record. There's no examination, no cross-examination, no recross, no filings. All we have and will have is hearsay from Northwestern. That's all we're going to have. I'm trying to get the public involved at a level. If they don't ask any questions, I'm not going to get much of a record. This will be the only record. The people have a right to read the record and to respond. We can take all the emails that come in, which are probably one or two. To my knowledge, nobody else but Northwestern is asking for face-to-face. As to why just them, I don't know. If MDU's fire remediation plan does not match Northwestern's, does not match Avista's, I'm not quite sure how we handle that. This is the most hard to understand bill I've ever read because I don't know what they're trying to do. Everything in House Bill 490 that they're supposed to do is on the record from the rate case. They did it 2 years before it was even written. This is about pre-approval and a tremendous amount of liability and a tremendous amount of angst. All I'm asking for is that if anybody wants to discuss anything to do with 490, we make sure they don't get into the rate case. We don't get into another law. We don't wind up with legal ramifications for doing that. And that the public can trust that everything that happens from this is open. Perhaps not as efficient as everybody would like, but I don't think a lawsuit in the middle of it's going to help. So that's where I'm coming from. Are there any other comments? Sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of questions. Lucas, help me out here. When 490 was being introduced by the legislature, this commission stood against that bill. Is that correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pinocci, that is my recollection. Yes.
Because we were concerned about what liability might fall upon us. Is that correct?
I believe, Mr. President, Commissioner Pinocci, there were a number of concerns raised by the commission and testimony before the committees.
So to be a little gun shy, where a commissioner brings out these concerns, you know, there's some good concerns. That's why we stood against the bill. I want to respectfully disagree with Commissioner Bukacek. Will, my next question is, for you to record the meeting would just be push a button. The meeting's recorded and you go on with the meeting. Do you think that's a tremendous burden to do that? Your opinion?
The physical act of recording a meeting is probably not burdensome. Whether the party you're interacting with is going to be giving you candid responses in that setting is a question.
So let's talk about this a bit. And I have tremendous respect for you, Will, because you've been here longer than anyone I know. Being that this commission was concerned about House Bill 490, And I believe all 5 of the commissioners voted with concern. That's my recollection. And we stood against the bill. It might not be a bad idea to have a recording based on liability could be in our lap. So just to push a button and be able to have that recording seems like that might help us out in the event something goes haywire, a lawsuit. And I don't see that being a large burden. But here's a good question. Do you think if the meeting is recorded, that the meeting would happen differently, things would be said differently than if it wasn't recorded? What are your thoughts there?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pinochi, I do think that there could be differences. And again, just to reiterate a point that I think has been made, you know, you will get to the point in this process where there is a public meeting that is recorded. As Vice President Fielder was pointing out, the commission is required under the bill to have a public meeting. You will be conducting that meeting and the participants will be making their public comments to you, and you'll be able to ask questions of those participants, and that will all be recorded. And so it creates a record that will be relevant to your ultimate decision-making. But what we're talking about here is, you know, interactions with the parties over how can we make the process as pragmatic as possible given the short timeframes, as I've indicated before, not regarding the substance, but the process that will be used to deal with all of the issues that Mr. Hamilton had brought up regarding the fact that the bill doesn't contemplate discovery or a public hearing, those types of things. How do we deal with that situation when we're trying to implement this bill?
But I do think what you said is that there would be a difference of what may be said based on the meeting being recorded or not. Do you agree with that? Is that what you said?
Commissioner Pinochi, yes, I speculated that that could be the case.
I believe so. And my concern is this entire commission stood against House Bill 490 because we had concerns.
Mr. President, may I address that incorrect statement?
Yeah.
No, I think we'll let him commit his, and then you can bring about your recollections. I do know we voted 5-0 for the governor to veto it.
It's a,
okay. Well,
it's a matter of public record.
That's what I remember. So, you know, subject to check. That's what I remember because I had a couple of meetings with the president on this, and we took a strong stand against 490. And because we did, I've got real concerns that that could come back to haunt us because we had good reasons to stand against it. So I do want to take time to listen to each commissioner's concern, and that's what I'm trying to do here today. And I had great concerns with 490 myself. I stood against it because of those concerns. So I'm trying to carefully listen to a commissioner who has more years here than anyone else. Also, as a commissioner who's elected, if the press was here today, I could see as commissioners exit the building where a reporter might say, well, look, didn't you run on transparency when you ran for this position? And I'll say, yes, I did. Why would you stand against the meeting being recorded, especially if the ratepayer could stand in front of liability? And that would be a pretty tough question to tell the press, right? But, you know, they're not paying attention to what we're doing here, but they might. And I'll tell you when that's going to happen is if there's a lawsuit filed based on 490. And then we're going to have to do some explaining. And I don't think it's a big deal to push a button and have something recorded based on a issue that we all had great concern with. So I think it's important that I point that out. And do you think, Will, in the event a lawsuit pops up, that you would be happy that the recording existed or not? What's your answer to that?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pinochi, I can only speculate at the, you know, potential value that that recording might lend to some future lawsuit over liability. I mean, again, I think what's ultimately going to be more important in any potential lawsuit is going to be what the commission puts in its final decision on a utilities wildfire mitigation plan, and how you justify that decision based on the information that you obtain through the process. And we're several steps before that, just trying to figure out what process we're going to use to be able to get you the information that you put into your order. So I guess I don't really know how to answer that question, but I feel like I just don't know that that kind of a recording is going to ultimately be something that is a strong driver of any sort of litigation outcome.
Mr. President and Commissioner Pinochi, if I may add. I second everything that Mr. Rosequist just said. I would also just like to underscore, for the sake of understanding here, that staff is not requesting the ability to meet behind closed doors with utilities about the substance of the plans. The subject matter, the facts and information that become the basis of the commission's decision has to be public. I don't see any process going forward here where the basis of the commission's decision is something that was not filed publicly available in the administrative record of the dockets that will eventually be created for these wildfire mitigation plans. And I just want to make that clear. When it comes to the basis for the commission's decision, I agree with President Molnar. That has to be public, that has to be transparent, that has to be in the record.
And I listened to you carefully when you explained that, and I thank you for doing that. I think you made that really clear, but I'm still bringing out the concern that Molnar has brought up, President Molnar. So I just want to point out that Montana is one of the highest fire risk states in the United States. California has just went through the most expensive fire in the history of the United States, and utilities are partly on the hook for that in the billions of dollars. And being Montana is a very high risk state according to the fire risk map. Also, I've got a phone call that some insurance companies are denying homeowners insurance because of that right now in Montana. And we stood strongly against 490. I understand President Molnar's heightened concern. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
So votes are documented, and I know for certain that when Trevor presented this bill, there were some that wanted to oppose it, that voted for the PSC to oppose House Bill 490, but the vote was 3 to oppose and 2 to monitor. I know that for a fact. So it is not true that we all voted to oppose it. And when it comes to the veto of the governor, that was April 30th, the memorable hearing that we had here, and it's all a matter of public record. You know, I was very much against that veto. And during the hearing process and after it was passed by the legislature and after he signed it, I continue to say, I think House Bill 490 is one of the most important bills of the session in terms of the Public Service Commission's ability to go forward and keep the lights on and the heat on. So, and then I wanted to address very quickly the lawsuit issue. In my roughly 2.5 years as a PSC commissioner, the PSC litigation that stands out in my mind arose from commissioner delays and commissioner unabashed bias. Nothing whatsoever to have to do with our staff, nothing about staff meeting with staff of regulated utilities. So it is not true that that has caused lawsuits.
I found Mr. Green's letter finally. And this goes to your memories that he never said that I could go and read in his offices. To the extent he disagrees with our position and continue to request this information, Northwestern will work with your staff to arrange a mutually agreeable time for you to review these documents in our offices. Again, there's no documentation. There's nothing. I'm asking for a minimum amount of documentation to the point of views of impropriety. Certainly not the first and won't be the last. We got a former Senate president that was taken clear out of the Senate based on views of impropriety. You don't have to be guilty of anything. If we vote today to maintain closed doors and no documentation, Article 2, Section 9 becomes immaterial where they can ask for documentation. We don't have any documentation. I don't think it's a big ask to say put it in writing when there's a conflict between what's in the, a lack of conflict between what's in 490, something we have to deal with, and a rate case that we're not allowed to talk about. This is a very, very, very narrow ask. And I think the people of Montana deserve open, honest communication. Will the communication change if it's recorded? I'm afraid so. And I don't like the kind that happens because it's behind a closed door or it's in a phone call. So that isn't a disparagement on anybody. It's a fact. So are there any other conversations we had on this?
Mr. President, I won't repeat what I said earlier, but I take exception with the way you characterized the vote. You know, my vote today is to allow our staff to do their jobs in a professional manner and not get in the way of that unnecessarily. And I think they've made it clear that that what this is targeted at is ministerial, it's procedural, it's not substantive, it's not bearing on the decision of the commission. So this commission will not meet behind closed doors with any party that's before it. We will be open, and I will continue to maintain that stance, and we're required to by law. But today's vote is about allowing our staff to just simply do their work, which I think some folks don't really understand too well here at this bench.
I think I do understand it, but I would point out that I agree that our final vote will be open. Everything leading up to that, under the way we're doing things with this, will not be. Staff recommendation will be based on their communications, their thoughts, their feelings, what they have found. It will not be based on any public involvement. There will be no discovery. There will not be anything. And to say that, to get around that in this very, very small way, I think I am characterizing it exactly correctly. One is a closed door and the other one is an open door. One is recorded, one's not recorded. There is no way to mince that.
And one is picking up a phone and asking for clarification, which will not be permitted if your motion passes.
Or sending an email or sending a text that says check your email. This is done all day, every day. What I'm talking about here. To that end, seeing no further conversation, all those in favor of my motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
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 Motion fails. The doors are closed. So,
Mr. President, point of personal privilege.
no,
I'd like to ask you to be more respectful of the commission's decision and not to mischaracterize it the way that you seem to do, and to refrain from casting aspersions on this agency.
Highly derogatory, Mr. President.
any other comment after vote? So with that in mind, we now move on to a North Star question, which actually was on my MSN feed from our last commission deal. So I'm assuming they're going to cover this today. So where's my, okay, we have before us now, where's my docket number here? I don't have my glasses. Give me a minute. I'll get us there. There we go. Okay, we have docket number. Oh, we don't have a docket number. So we have the case of water utility rate making to require water companies under investigation to report outages and repair estimation ASAP from the water operator to the Public Service Commission and affected customers. This is being brought forward by me. I'll,
May I
throw-
ask staff a question, please?
Sure.
Grant, you would? Thank you. Has there been any problem with water utilities reporting outages? An estimated time of repair, has there been a problem with that, to your knowledge?
President Molnar, Commissioner Bukchek, since my time here at the commission, the water utility that is currently under investigation is North Star, and there has not been any problems with them reporting any outages in a promptly, timely fashion to the commission or perhaps to their customers as well.
And the public that are involved, that live there, they're very active. So I think if there had been one that the utility hadn't reported, you would find out about it. So it sounds like it's pretty clear they've reported every single one. So if you would be willing to render an opinion, do you think this is unnecessary? This motion, this what Commissioner Molnar is proposing, do you think?
President Molnar, Commissioner Bukchek, when an outage occurs, there is some lag time between when the operators of that utility is reporting, trying to fix that problem, and when the utility managers maybe receive notice and can get that notice out to customers, whether it's via mass text or email. Do I think this rulemaking is necessary? I do not think it's necessary. I think that the utility, specifically North Star here being under investigation, has promptly communicated with our consumer compliance team when an outage occurs.
Thank you.
If I might chime in on that. This is from you to me. On or about July 2025, an electrical short caused the water lines and pumps to go down at North Star 6 active wells at around 6 a.m. At 6:30 a.m., they had them running again. And the customers without water for about 30-minute period between 6 and 6:30. At 8:30, they called the commission. This was an attorney that called the commission. It wasn't somebody that could answer a question. At 8:47, North Star sent an email. Shortly during this time frame, we all may recall, during public comment, the homeowners association head, whatever his title is, said that he was deluged with texts, hundreds, wanting to know where's the water. I don't see a problem with saying that, because there's services available. They can send out all 247 texts, the push of a button. Your water is down. You wake up in the morning at 7 o'clock, you go to brush your teeth, you don't have any water. I don't think them notifying their customers when they know there's a problem, we're down, we're trying to fix it, we got it working, you're good. Went through it last night with my own co-op. Big storm, power went out. To say that they can send out an email and a text to their customers first, telling them what the problem is, when they think it's going to be back on, is not happening. Maybe you're satisfied with it. I'm thinking maybe the members of North Star are not. How do I know? The head of the association said he was deluged with angry texts and emails, phone calls. He had to get to work, and he's got 100 phone calls to make. For them to take the burden of communication is not too much to ask. Matter of fact, it should be a mandate. How many water companies are there currently under investigation in Montana? Sir.
President Mola, there's currently one water company that this commission is under investigation, which is North Star.
So to tell them to communicate with their customers upon notice that they have a water problem, sewage problem, because they do both, as my understanding, you think is not important, that they communicate with them first and directly, as opposed to have their attorney call us 2 hours later.
To address your comments, President Molnar, this commission has the ability to implement reporting requirements as the utility being investigated. And so in the past, when this commission has made decisions, they have the ability to make North Star report certain things. For example, if an outage were to happen, we could implement those reporting requirements in those notices to North Star so they're aware of that.
So what is wrong with my idea of somebody who knows something, not their attorney, contact their customers when they have an outage, and perhaps contact them and when it's back up, as opposed to 2 hours later, they contact us, and then almost an hour later or half an hour later, they contact their customers. We're not talking lack of communication. We're talking the customers come first with a knowledgeable text, a knowledgeable something. The water didn't work, they turn it on, they can see what's going on, versus at their convenience, they contact us with a phone call, which we really don't have any documentation and probably should not have to have the capacity to send out a text to 247 homes.
President Molnar and Commissioners, if that is a request that this commission would like to make, that is something that could be made with North Star. And to do a rulemaking for this, in my opinion, is an overburdensome due to the fact that the water utility is already under investigation. And if any new water utility comes before the commission under investigation, during that time, this commission could make a recommendation to have certain reporting requirements for that utility to report outages in a certain time frame to customers, mass texts, emails, etc.
Would you agree that my motion does not target North Star? It's any that are under investigation. I don't know how many hundreds of those we have out there, but this is the one that's under investigation. There may be a couple more that would come under it. Apparently, most of them don't have any problem with their customers, and the customers don't have any problem with them. And I believe a lot of that's communication. That's all I'm asking here. Would you agree that this rule would not affect North Star only, but rather all that come under investigation? If North Star is no longer under investigation for whatever reason, and somebody else comes in, the rule is there.
President Molnar, I would agree with you that North Star is the only water utility currently under investigation. And to my knowledge, I've been here since 2018, is the only water utility that has been under an investigation, or that the commission has opened up an investigation docket for a small water utility. Whether to say any more in the future will arise, I don't know that answer. However, this commission regulates approximately 26 to 30 small water and sewer utilities.
Any other comments?
Mr. President, thank you. I don't think it's a bad idea what you're trying to do here, but I think there's a shortcut to do it, and that is through a commission order. And we don't need to go through the rulemaking process to do this. And I think we have already required North Star to do the reporting, so that's why we get those reports. I don't really think that it's necessary to enter rulemaking. If you want to consider entering rulemaking, which is what it says here, I guess we could have that discussion, but I don't think we really need to in order to get to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Well, my problem is, Commissioner, that we require that they reporting to us before they report to their customers, and their customers have a right to know why they don't have water.
Well, Mr. President, we can change that and just adjust that order. We don't need to go through the entire Secretary of State rulemaking process to do that. We can actually just do it.
Mr. President?
Commissioner.
Thank you. So Grant has already stated that North Star, since we're talking about North Star now, that they have every time reported outages to us and to the customers. Is that correct?
President Molnar, Commissioner Buchek, to my knowledge, recollection, that is correct.
So they're already doing that. And so You know, while I'm getting kind of used to your grandstanding as a hero to the public, I really do not appreciate the misrepresentation of Grant in acting like he doesn't care about the customers, because that was definitely implied.
Any others? Commissioner Panochi?
The complaints coming from these particular residents has been longer than any water utility complaint I've ever seen. And I'm struggling to find what we can do to get them to really address the problems and get them fixed. Any thoughts there on what we could do to make it so that North Star understands that they've got to fix these issues? What ideas do you have that you think could put that in the forefront to actually answer some questions? A couple of things we went over in the past. They could hook up to a public water supply with a meter, and when they don't have water, that next door neighbor could supply them water. The meter would measure, and then they'd simply pay them. That was one answer. Another one was they could put in some water storage and have a certain amount of storage. That way, when the water went out, they could use that storage. Before it ran out, they could call water trucks in to fill the storage. That was an answer. There was an event where a pump burned up and they went to order one and had to wait a period of time for the pump to get in, several days. The answer to that was they should have a pump on hand ready to install immediately. What do you think we can do to get some of this done or make him look at that as a priority? Because this is the longest water complaint I've heard of. And I asked some of the older commissioners around years ago, and to their recollection, this was one of the worst cases they had. What are your thoughts? You might have some ideas.
President Molnar, if I may interject here, President Panochi, that topic is way off the motion. The motion is whether to consider initiating rulemaking regarding notice to the customers. And I think that if we go beyond that, we're not giving the parties that would be interested an adequate opportunity to be here and participate. So I think we should stick to the motion.
I'm going to overrule that. We've had discussions on what else can we do besides the rule. This is a question on what else can we do besides, to get around even needing a rule. The question of what else can we do is wide open right now. I would have to agree that had he opened it with that and we hadn't had the prior discussion, you would be correct. But as it is, it was open without any objection.
And forgive me, Mr. President, I guess there is no motion yet. There's just a rambling conversation at this point.
Okay, I will make a motion to avoid rambling conversations. Consider rulemaking to require water utilities under investigation to report outages and estimated time of repair to their customers and the PSC as soon as possible. So that's what the motion is. I make the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there, I guess we're starting over. So did you get your question answered?
I did not, but I have a question on the motion.
Okay, finish your question. I'll restate the motion.
Okay, so on the motion, it looks like they send out an email and a text when there's water outage. Is the Public Service Commission on that email and text messaging?
President Molnar, Commissioner Panochi, I'd have to check with our consumer compliance team with that. To my knowledge, we receive phone calls from the operator themselves when there's an outage.
Here's an idea. It would seem to make sense that they put us on the email list and on the text messaging list. What do you think of that idea? Do you like it? You don't like it?
Commissioner Panochi, we could already be on the email list. I just don't recall if I'd have to check with the team and get back to you on that.
Yeah, let me know. Thank you.
For clarification, I'm not aware that they send out text, that they have a text service that does that. It's my understanding. It's all email and in our case, a phone call. Is that correct?
President Molnar, Commissioners, I don't have that answer for you. I know in the past there's been talk about sending out mass text by the HOA president and their committee. However, I know Northstar themselves in this last instance has sent out an email to all individuals, customers on that email list.
I don't know either. I just never heard the word text in any of these conversations. It's all been email, so.
Yeah, the President Molnar, the texting conversations may have come before your time here last 6
Would you know
months.
if it was installed or they started doing texting and then quit it, or was it ever actually used?
President Molnar, as previously mentioned, there was some conversation with mass text between the HOA president and the committee. Whether those ended up getting implemented, I do not know.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question. I want to make sure that I have that I'm not misunderstanding this. Grant, can we, if the commission wanted to implement this requirement upon water utilities that are under investigation, can we do that through an order rather than having to go through rulemaking? And do you think that would be the better route to go, or should we get the rulemaking in place so it's there and we don't have to go through the process of issuing an order? I mean, because I agree that they should notify their customers as soon as possible when there's an outage. No question about that in my mind. But what's the best procedure to get that accomplished?
President Molnar, Commissioner, Vice President Fielder, I would call legal up here, Laura Vahowski, or somebody
Lucas is in
Lucas
the room, or whoever he designates.
to help address that question. I
Okay,
don't feel comfortable answering that.
thank you.
I'm sorry, Vice President Fielder, would you mind repeating that question?
Yes, Mr. Hamilton, the motion here is to initiate rulemaking that requires privately owned water companies that are under investigation to report outages and estimated time of repair to their customers and the PSC as soon as possible. And in reading the rundown that President Molnar has here, this company in this instance knew that there was an outage between 6 a.m. and 6:30. They communicated it to the PSC. Can we borrow that again? At 8:30 a.m., so a couple hours later. And then 17 minutes later, then they started sending notices out to the customers. And I think where the president is trying to go is make sure the customers get the notices, because they're the ones that are really impacted and need to have it right away. So is there a way to do that other than rulemaking? Should we do the rulemaking in order to accomplish that objective, or should we just do an order, and what would be the best path to accomplish the goal I think that the president has here?
President Molnar, Vice President Fielder, the commission does have options here. You can order the utility to provide the notice. You could adopt a rule if you didn't want to have to individually order small water utilities who are under investigation to provide that notice. That would be a blanket statement that applies generally to any utility in this circumstance, if that may arise in the future. But yes, you also have the option to order the utility to provide that notice immediately, or as soon as it's practicable.
And if we go through rulemaking, how long of a process is that?
President Molnar, Vice President Fielder, it is a process. It would require first staff to draft the notice of proposed rulemaking. We'd have to follow the commission's internal policies to get that scheduled for a work session, after which it would be published in the Administrative Register. The Administrative Register is still published on an alternating basis of essentially twice a month. So you'd have to get that first published in the Administrative Register. Your notice of proposed rulemaking would include a deadline for public comment and an opportunity for a public hearing, or you may, if you so choose, contemplate no public hearing and wait to see if you get a request for a public hearing. Those two options will produce different timelines in terms of adopting the rule. But at a minimum, I would say that it'll take the commission at least a month to have decision today on to having the actual hearing on the proposed rule. After the hearing on the proposed rule, staff will have to summarize the comments received in a notice of adoption of the proposed rule. That will also have to go through the IPM process to be scheduled with the commission. And at that point, the commission would again publish it in the administrative register on the publication schedule of the administrative register. Only then would the rule become effective. So there, as between the two options, know that rulemaking will take more time than simply ordering the utility to do a thing.
Okay, so it looked, I mean, I think our rulemaking is typically 60 days at best to get it implemented. Is that about right?
I would say that that is a reasonable estimation of a quick rulemaking.
Okay, and it's several hours of staff time to engage in that process and
It-
commission time.
President Molnar, Vice President Fielder, yes, in terms of business meetings, work sessions, and public hearing, depending on how many public comments you receive, it could involve considerably more staff time.
Okay, and then if we were to just, can we issue an order just requiring this right now of the one company that is under investigation? And if we can, what would be the time frame of that?
President Molnar, Vice President Fielder, I would say not right now, because the agenda for this particular work session didn't contemplate that type of decision. So we'd have to separately notice a new agenda item in a subsequent business meeting. Under the commission's usual internal policy manual processes, that would at least be 2 weeks out. You can also go out of cycle or sort of waive or set aside the normal process, the normal timelines involved in submitting a work session request in order to get it scheduled for a sooner business meeting.
Okay, so under the normal process, about 2 weeks from now, we could probably have this settled under just placing it into an order if the commission approves the order. And then if we go the rulemaking route, we're talking at least probably 2 months or more.
President Molnar, Vice President Fielder, I would say that is a fair representation of how quickly you could begin each of those processes.
Okay. Mr. President, I don't know if you'll consider this a friendly recommendation or not, but I would suggest you withdraw.
Everything you say is friendly.
I would suggest you withdraw your motion and rephrase it as maybe Lucas could give us some words to place this on the agenda in terms of for consideration as a commission order, and then we can just go the shorter route.
Lucas, I really don't mind riding double-breasted on this. Is there any reason that we could not today begin the rulemaking and at the next available work session have a commission order so that we are covered by the order well, not immediately, 2 weeks probably. And then, but the rule making is going forward so that anybody else that comes before us, we don't have to make a special ruling. I can't imagine the problems we would face if we tell this water company that you have to send out text and you have to do this and you have to do that. And here's the order in which they're going to go out. We don't tell the next one because perhaps that isn't their problem. And the one after that we do. So we get a commission order as quickly as we can get it. In the meantime, we start rule making. So we could start the rulemaking today and work on the commission order, maybe have an out of cycle if that would speed it up a little bit. Is there any problem with doing both simultaneously?
Mr. President and Commissioners, no, there is no legal reason why you couldn't pursue both the belt and the suspenders.
Well stated. Commissioner Wilborn.
Just one other quick question on process. Lucas, is there any reason or time constraints why if we did do an out of cycle, that out of cycle couldn't run simultaneously with our next business meeting next Tuesday?
President Molnar and Commissioner Wellborn, it's a great question about the nature of out of cycle work sessions. Typically, if the commission is already planning on having a business meeting next Tuesday, which it is, we would include any items for the commission's consideration as work sessions within that business meeting. We wouldn't have to go out of the ordinary and schedule a out of cycle work session. The out of cycle work session is really designed to address emergencies, exigent problems that require the commission to meet before it's planning to meet again.
Okay, so would that be something that we could accomplish maybe during next week's work session so we can get the ball rolling here?
So Commissioner Molnar, sorry, President Molnar, Commissioner Wellborn, theoretically, yes. So just to lay out what you'll be waiving here. Normally the process is at least 2 business days before a work session request is submitted, we have to have draft materials circulated to management. Assuming that there are no issues with those draft materials on Monday before a business meeting, 1 week before a business meeting on Monday, a work session request would be submitted. By the next day, all the final work session materials would be submitted with that work session request. They'd be published in Ready and circulated to commissioners. And then on the following Tuesday, you would have your business meeting to consider the item. So what we're talking about waiving here is the Thursday before the Monday, right, when the drafts materials are circulated, and also the Monday, because we're now past the date, the deadline for submission of a work session request. And I mean, realistically, it would be impossible for staff to have the materials prepared for this before the end of the day today. So it would be stacking up a lot of additional materials for the commission staff to work on a relatively short turnaround here.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Commissioner Fielder.
I hope you don't hate me for this, but I'm going to make a substitute motion that just so we can segregate these 2 paths forward. And I'm going to make a substitute motion that the commission place on its agenda for our next business meeting a draft order that staff will prepare, implementing what you have described here in your motion. Not rulemaking, but just an order that would require privately owned water companies that are under investigation to report outages and estimated time of repair to their customers and the PSC as soon as possible. I move that we place that on the agenda for the next business meeting as in the form of an order.
I would second that substitute motion, Mr. President.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any discussion? I guess my discussion is that any progress forward is good progress, but I don't see why we wouldn't want to start a rule. It has far more effect. We can say you're in violation of a rule. Everybody is aware of the rule, including the water companies that come on.
Yeah.
So to say that we're not going to do one, but we're going to do the other, I have no problem with dropping in a commission order to fill in during the time of the 60 days.
Okay.
As the drought continues, we're going to see more and more of these. There's no way around it.
And Mr. President, my motion doesn't preclude you implementing rulemaking. It's just that would be handled as a separate motion. So if this motion passes, we know we're going to have this issue on the agenda for next week for potentially quick implementation. And after that motion is dispensed with, I actually have to excuse myself. So I'll leave it to the commission to decide if they want to move, the rest of the commission to decide if they want to move forward with rulemaking and under a separate motion.
Okay, I'll ask, it seems to me that we can't do it next week because of all the things you talked about, unless we just not enough time to get all the documents together, et cetera. Am I correct in that or not?
Mr. President, I would have to defer to Grant and the work team about their current workloads. But before Vice President Fielder leaves, I'd just like a bit of clarification on the scope of the motion. If it's phrased as an order that would direct all water utilities under investigation to provide the notices as described, that is a statement of general applicability that would normally be a rule. So
Yeah.
It would be helpful if that was narrowed to just the instance of North Star, and the commission can then consider the merits of that proposal at the next business meeting.
I got you. Thank you, Mr. President and Mr. Hamilton. I will restate my motion then so that we don't get crosswise with our required processes under rulemaking. So I move that staff prepare a draft order for the commission's consideration to be placed on the agenda of our next business meeting. That would require North Star water utility to report outages and estimated time of repair to their customers and the PSC soon as possible.
I'll second the motion.
And I will call for the question because I think we've discussed it pretty thoroughly.
We have a motion. The motion has been seconded. Does everybody understand the motion? Seeing a lack of head shaking to and fro. All those in favor of the substitute motion to have the commission issue an order that the water company under investigation must report to the PSC and their customers, which I'm not quite sure how to do that.
Mr. President, it would have staff prepare a draft order for the
Okay.
commission's consideration at the
Okay.
next meeting.
Okay, I guess we can do that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I still like the idea of starting rules at the same time, so I'm an A. 401, the substitute motion passes. I can resist the urge. Where'd you go? Oh. Okay, Commissioner Panochi.
Lucas, I'd like to address what we could do to have the outages stop where they actually fix the problem. What we accomplished just now is they have to give everybody a notice in a hurry. By the way, I'd like to add that I'd like the Public Service Commission to be on that email if we're not already. And I'd like to encourage a text to be done. Some people would like to know if their water is out via text just because they get those a little quicker sometimes. Text seem to be more dependable than email. So I'd like to suggest that. But getting back to my point of real answers, for instance, we had a pump go out and it was a short in the system. The backup pump should have been on a separate breaker. We should have a backup pump. We should have a pump ready to go in case one burns up. We should have water storage. We could connect to the neighboring water system with a meter. And in the rare occurrence, when there is an out, where they don't have water, that water can be backfit in from that. What do I need to do to get this going? Because listening to their concerns, they want some real answers to fix these and address these problems. What's my procedure there to get that going?
President Molnar, Commissioner Panochi. I'm unsure of the procedure here because we are beyond the originally noticed purpose of the work session. But I would reiterate two things. One, if you've got specific questions about the responses that North Star has given the commission to those alternative proposals that have been discussed in prior meetings, I believe we have some information that Grant would be happy to share with you. But I also think it's important to remember that the commission is not the management of the utility, right? The commission reviews the prudency of the management of the utility, the prudency of the decisions that the utility is making, and indeed enforces public utility law. And so as President Molnar noted at the beginning of this meeting in his announcement, it won't be very long here before the commission has a recommendation from staff on the penalty amount that North Star could face if the commission decides to approve, the penalty amount and pursue that. And I think that, in an ideal world, we can negotiate with the utility to find some resolutions here that provide meaningful relief to the customers of North Star. Understanding, of course, that outages will occasionally happen. Hopefully rarely, hopefully not for very long, but if the expectation is 100% uptime with no possible outages, that may be an unrealistic expectation. I think we need to focus on what the commission will decide with respect to the compliance of North Star and about the prudency of investments that utility is going to be making in the rate case that they have indicated to us will be filed at the end of September.
Please.
Concern I have with a fine, in case North Star ratepayers are listening, is we assess a large fine and then they raise the rates to pay the fine. We give them a fine. That money could have been used to fix the problem. And I understand that we're not in the management business, okay? But common sense says these ideas that I've discussed with them before years ago, and I've been working on this for years now, they just don't seem to pay attention to any real answers. And we have to look at, we have more outages with this water utility than any other that I've ever seen or heard of. So I think to encourage real answers to fix these problems, that's what I think the ratepayer wants me to bring up. So that's my concern with that. Thank you.
If there is money that's received from the penalty, that goes to the general fund, correct? It doesn't go to correct the problem. It goes to the government general fund, so it does not help the customers. Is that correct?
President Molnar, Commissioner Bukacek, correct. Any penalties, financial penalties levied by the commission go to the state general fund.
Yeah, and I think it's a disservice to consumers when public service commissioners act like there's things we can do that are really truly outside our jurisdiction. And I know that when this is heard and the draft is going to address jurisdiction. Is that correct?
President Molnar and Commissioner Bukacek, yes. Yes, the staff memo, I expect, will discuss the commission's jurisdiction.
And I think that'll help the public tremendously and help commissioners too that don't understand that. Thank you.
I think we're getting a lot into the August 5th meeting. I'm sure it's not in today's work session request. So if we could save our questions on jurisdiction, et cetera, for the 5th, I would appreciate it. To that end, we are coming to the end here. The date, oh, wait a minute. Is our online commenters still online? No, they are not. I apologize for that. We got a little going on here. Perhaps they can call in next week. To that end, the date of the next business meeting will be July 29th on Tuesday, 2025. Seeing no further business to come before the commission, for the record, the time is 3:30 p.m. and the date is July 22, 2025. This meeting is adjourned. Oh, wait a minute. Long as we're still here, we are going to have, we'll take a 10-minute break. We're going to have a wildfire mitigation informational meeting. I don't know how many are online. Apparently the invitation we sent out had a link, so it wouldn't necessarily go through. Everyone would know about that. So all those that are interested, it's 3:31 and we'll just make it 3:45. We will begin that.